right, and welcome to episode 1 of the Growth Trajectory podcast, where we meet the people behind the innovation. First guest today on episode 1. What a privilege.
I'm honoured to be on number 1. Then again, will you have a number 2? It all comes down to
That's
how well this goes, I suppose.
It might be a one-hit wonder. Is Charlie Gunningham. So welcome, Charlie.
Thanks, Bertrand. Thank you very much for having me. Love to see you again.
Yeah, no worries. So I basically want to just kick off and ask you a bit about your experience in innovation.
Sure.
So you've been involved in a lot of different kinds of innovation. I mean, you founded AussieHome.com back in the day and grew that business. Yeah, back in the day when the
22 years ago, this month actually, coming up. Yeah. Can you
wow.
6th of December, 99.
There you go. There you go. That's awesome. And then, and then ended up exiting that business and selling to Rewa, which is a great success. You then were involved with business news for a while when it was, as far as I understand, it was mainly an analog kind of distribution, and your strategy was to take it online and go digital.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into it more detail, but basically I thought, having sold to Rewa, I'd be at the Rewa for the rest of my life, running Rewa.com. All my team got jobs at Rewa. Rewa are a superb institute, incredibly well run. Neville Posey, who will be retiring next year as CEO, has been there since 1977.
Wow.
He's an awesome guy. He was the CFO when they made the acquisition of AussieHome.com, and Ann Arnold was the CEO. She's since retired. 2 excellent people, really looked after me and my team. I thought I'd be there forever, but then the owner of Business News came over, and I just thought, well, I'd done 13 years of online real estate.
Mm-hmm.
I was passionate about media and things that I'm afraid have only got worse with false news and fake news and that rubbish, but and people in the little bubbles just getting the information they want. But I admired Business News. I think it was a high quality publication. And when I was basically invited to help them with their digital strategy, but they didn't have a digital person, I thought, well, there's an opportunity. Maybe that's my next challenge. So I went in there and was in there for 4 years.
Yeah, excellent.
And then to finish off your story, I then went to the federal government, worked on a fund which funds startups, because no doubt we'll talk about that. There's a very low level of capital ends up in the early stage tech, and working for a federal fund allowed me to ensure, or at least tried hard to ensure, there were more deals done here in WA and more good early stage tech companies were funded.
As an AC grant advisor, accelerating commercialization. And we had many dealings together in that space as well.
You did.
Yeah, for sure.
So where would you like to start?
Well, actually, let's start there. Let's start in terms of AC grants. So I imagine, in that space, you would have come across lots of ideas and people very enthusiastic about their ideas. But it takes a lot of work to take an idea through to commercialization. And I imagine you would have picked up some wisdom around how to do that successfully. So what would be your biggest tip for a company that has an innovation heavy strategy and is trying to bring new technology or new products into the market?
Well, first, it's really hard. So that make no dispersions on if it doesn't work, because it's the most likely thing, as I tell people, is it's not going to work. But don't worry, don't do it and then just fail. But I mean, the most likely outcome is it's going to fail, or not quite what you think now. You're probably going to have to change it. Even with AussieHome.com, we thought as soon as we put up our website, people would just put down the newspaper, and why do we even need to advertise in this thing? Of course, it's the internet. We're going to look for property online. Well, of course, that was incredibly naive. And one thing I learned is the greatest changes happen slowly. In fact, I write for Business News still, a startup column, and my latest article is exactly that. The greatest changes happen slowly, and that's good, because the slowest changes are the ones that stick, the ones that hold, and that's how you create a great company. Because after all, what we're trying to do here is create great companies, right? Great companies. And some will need a little bit of rocket fuel to help them along their way. Some will need to raise money to build the thing. Most don't deserve any money. Right? And some will get money, and I go, how did they get money? You know, and then some, well, I'm thinking should be backed, don't get backed. You know, the market's not perfect. And that's maybe where there's a role for government to help, which is where I liked, you know, back the ones that deserve funding that may not have got it. But your question was more about what makes a success, or what are some of the tips? Yeah. So what I look for, and I've left the federal government program now, as my contract was 3 years and came to an end. And I'm now sort of a lone gun, and I meet tech companies all day long. And there's pretty much one thing I want to hear from them. And often I don't hear it from them, but it's the one thing I want to hear from them. And before people fall asleep, this is the most important thing I'm going to say, is I want to know who their customer is. That's the person paying them money, not necessarily their user, but their customer. We got that wrong at Aussie Home, and I can explain that in a sec. The person who's paying them money. And I want to know what problem that startup or tech business is solving for that customer. So why the customer is going to pay to solve that problem. So what problem does the customer currently have? And I want to see a big global problem, one that wakes them up at 3 o'clock in the morning and they go, who is going to solve me of this problem? Right? That problem. So I think business, you can make business very complicated, or you can make it very simple. I like low-hanging fruit. I like to make things simple. Let's not make it complicated. I've got an MBA. I can, you know, put a suit on and mix it with everybody up and down the terrace, but really that you don't need much management speak. It's pretty simple. You solve a problem for your customer, because then you're creating value for them. If you create value for them, they will pay you. And if they pay you, maybe you've got a business. Bing, bang, bong. That's it.
Yeah, brilliant.
Often I don't hear it.
Yeah,
I see a startup who wants to open up their laptop and show me their slide deck and give me a demo. And I go, please put that thing away. I want to hear about you, what you're doing, and tell me about your customer and how you're solving a problem for them.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. I love the simplicity of that. And it is very important to really define your problem very well and define your ideal customer very well, for sure. So I'm interested in the difference you see between customer and user, and how that came about in Aussie Home.
Right. So when Nick and I met on the MBA program at UWA, so Nick's a Swiss guy, grew up in America. I'm obviously English, you can tell by the accent, although I don't know what my accent is now. English people think I sound very Aussie, and Aussie people think I sound plummy English, but anyway, so I'm rejected wherever I am, Andrea. Nick and I met and we hit it off, and we were both not from here, but we bought a property here recently, back in 97, 98, we were doing our MBA. And we were sort of talking about how ridiculously inefficient the market was for property, and how you had to wait for the paper on a Saturday and trawl around the home opens. And, you know, that whole process took months and months and months. And there was just like a very inefficient way of collecting the information about what properties for sale and what the price should be and all that sort of stuff. And, you know, it was 99, it was the year of the dot-coms. Everyone had an MBA and a pulse and a dot-com idea. People threw money at you. So we thought, wouldn't it be good if there was a map-based property website where you could actually see where the properties for sale or rent were, you know, color-coded, one color for sale, one color for rent. You could have filters. You could zoom in on a suburb and see where the schools are and the shops are and the beach is, or the river is, or the main transport routes or whatever. And then you could just click and open the properties. How good would that be? Now, this, you got to imagine, this is 6 years before Google Maps, right? So we're used to maps now. We go, ooh, and you know, zoom in, all the property sites have maps. We were actually the world's first map-based property site. Pretty proud of that. We went and found technology that been used in the mining industry, and maybe by, you know, big logistics companies like Toll and maybe DtaxPerth, you know, but this was desktop heavy duty mapping. It hadn't really been applied on the net, and that's why we need to raise money. So we built a site for ourselves, property searchers. But as I tell many people in talks, who was our customer? Our customer was not the user of the website. The user of the website was looking for a property to rent, looking for a property to sell, buy, sorry. So they were home searchers like we had been, but we didn't make money from there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who was our customer?
Are you asking me?
Hmm.
Well, the people that are trying to sell or rent houses are your customer.
Who are they?
Well, real estate agents.
Real estate agents. I mean, there are some private sellers, but it's a small part of the market, right? It's about 3% of the market. So 97% of the market is real estate agents. And when we decided we weren't going to compete with real estate agents, we were going to help them sell properties, when pretty obviously they were our customer. They were going to pay us a monthly fee to put all their properties on our side. And so they became our customer. Now, what problem do the real estate agents have? Predominantly, what wakes them up at 3 a.m?
Trying to get.
This is a global problem.
Well, I would say one of their problems is trying to get as many people through the homes that they're selling as they can.
Not so much.
No.
They don't really care about buyers and renters as much, because that's not their customer. Who's their customer? I mean, obviously they want to do a deal. Of course they need buyers. Of course they need tenants. And I'm sure they're delightful and lovely with them, but they don't make money from them. Who's their customer?
Their customer is the people selling houses, the people that own houses.
The owners, the vendors.
Yeah.
Because they take a commission from that. Whether in property management, they charge a percentage of the rent, or whether they sell a property for their vendor, they'll take a commission of the purchase price, right? So therefore they need vendors. They need customers. Their customers, as soon as they sign up a listing, they know that if they price or present it correctly, it'll sell in 30 days. If it hasn't sold in 30 days, they probably haven't priced or presented it correctly. They can't control the market, but they can control how they present it and the price. And a little bit around the negotiation and all that. You know, some of them very good negotiators can make a deal happen, and that's really their job, right? They're brokers.
Yep.
So if their customers are vendors, they need vendors, because as soon as they've signed up a vendor and it sells, they need more.
Yeah.
You talk to any real estate agent right now, they will tell you, I haven't got any listings. There's a saying in real estate, list and last. Now, sadly, we didn't know this at the time. So we built a site for home buyers and home renters, and we fell in love with our product. The worst mistake entrepreneurs make, or one of the worst.
Yeah.
So look, I've got the badge, I've got the t-shirt, I've made all the mistakes. This is why I try and tell startups, focus with laser-like precision on your customer, that's the person paying you money, and the problem you're solving. So we suddenly realized, it took us about a year after launch, during which we'd almost died a couple of times, to realize that it's all about listing. We must give them listing tools. We started doing websites for them to make them look good.
Yeah.
We started doing, would you believe, magazines. List in our magazine, and list with me, and you can be in this magazine. Yeah. Right. It's a listing tool. Helps them get the listing. Gives them an edge over the other real estate agents. What on earth were we doing print for? We were supposed to be anti-print. But once we did print, which became about a third of our business for the first 5 years, websites, which became half the business, and then we had the subscription model of being on the portal, AussieHome.com. Those three revenue streams, that then put like a solid plank beneath our business, and I think then we were a business. But up until then, we were sort of searching for a business model, which is what startups do, right? You start out lean and mean, and you go, well, that's not working. Let's do this. Oh yeah, that's working. Let's do more of that. And you find your way. And then, and I think and you find your way by listening to your customers. The best thing we did was get customers into our office and give them glasses of wine and say, tell us your problems. Yeah. But I think it's better if startups find this out sooner rather than later. We didn't find it out till a year. Yeah. After we'd started. And I look back at our business plan now, and it's a joke, really, because what we thought we'd make money on, we didn't. Yeah. And what we ended up making money on was not even mentioned in our business plan. Yeah. That's brilliant. I love the fact that your revenue breakdown ended up being, a half on building websites, a third on a magazine, and then a tiny sliver on what you originally intended. That's the story of pivoting and changing and adapting till you find product market fit and figuring out who your actual customer is as opposed to who you think it is originally. I mean, that's a great story of
of transitioning as you needed to, and then finding what works and making that happen, which is great.
By focusing on the customer problem, which was listing. So later we did social media when that came along. Later we did apps. And after a while, I know print's not very profitable. So after 5 years, we actually dropped print altogether. I mean, it saved us, but that's when we became super profitable. So when we dropped the print completely, we could drop the magazine and just do websites and subscriptions and social media and apps. That's all digital. And that's very profitable because every new client you add is almost 99% profit. You know, the revenue just drops to the bottom line. There aren't any extra costs of adding. That's why I like tech startups that are scalable. People go, why do you keep banging on about startups? I say, well, a couple of reasons, but one of them, I love the business model. Once you get scale, it's a super fantastic, glorious business model. I mean, it just, every new customer drops to the bottom line. You know, we would give real estate agents who came on board a username and password. They'd upload all the properties because we didn't know what the properties were. They uploaded them all on our system, fed through to their websites, fed through to realestate.com, Domain, Rewa, all those other sites through our system. And we sent them an invoice and we drank coffee.
Brilliant. It's a great business model.
Not quite as easy as that, but that's right. And then it's no surprise that on year 5, we started paying dividends to shareholders because we were so super profitable. That we turned to our shareholders and said, would it be all right if we pay you a dividend? Nick and I are the biggest shareholders, but you haven't had any money back in 5 years. Would you like a dividend? And they all said, yes, okay. As long as you don't need the money for your growth plans. I said, no, it's all budgeted. This is spare money. And every year we paid a bigger dividend as it scaled. I mean, the second 5 years of Aussie Home was fantastic. Loved that. And then the eventual exit to Rewa.
Perfect. So I want to ask you about a venture in real estate that you've been involved in recently, which is the Property Tribune. And how did that opportunity come about for you? And you know, what were you looking to do going into that?
Well, that was my good friend Evan Cunningham Dunlop, who is the owner and managing director of Living Online. So I knew Evan in the late 2000s through something called eGroup. eGroup was a group, and still meets to this day, first Tuesday of the month, is a group of internet entrepreneurs. We're a not-for-profit association that's giving each other emotional support because the dot-com survivors of the early 2000s, there weren't many of us around. This is before Space Cubed, no co-working spaces, no angel groups, no accelerator programs. There was really no startup scene until about 2012 when Space Cubed opened and the first startup weekend, which I remember going to in September 2012, and then Perth Angels in 2013 and Founder Institute and then a few RAC, Seed Spark, and a few accelerators. But back in early 2000s, mid 2000s, no such group. So we formed eGroup, and Evan was an early member of that in the late 2000s, and I always got on well with him. He's a great guy. He's 6'9", and he's the tallest, smartest, greatest guy I've ever met. Super guy. And I actually used Living Online when I was at Business News. So I was CEO of Business News from 2015 to 2017, 3 years. And even before that, I was COO and GM of digital. So we put up a paywall at Business News, and our traffic collapsed, obviously. And then I used all the tricks I'd learned at Aussie Home and Rewa to get the traffic back up. That took about a year. And then I rang up Evan and went, help. He runs a digital marketing agency, and a very good one in Subiaco called Living Online. Last year, they actually won the top agency in the country.
Wow.
Award. Very impressive. So we grew the traffic, or rather he did. He told us what to do. We just, yep, we'll do that. We grew the traffic from behind a paywall from 40,000 unique visitors a month to 170,000 unique visitors a month over a few years. And on the back of that, we grew digital subscriptions, grew digital advertising from zero, and we transformed the business. So I knew Evan, not only a good guy, he was good at what he did.
Yeah.
So last year, when I exited the AC grant federal government program, I'm now, so what am I going to do now? Okay. I thought, you know what I want to do? I want to work with tech companies that I really admire and people I admire and companies I can help. Startups, tech companies of all shapes and sizes, ASX listed, private, small, like single person operators, big team, whatever. And I don't want to have a staff. I don't want to have a boss. I don't want to have an office. Here I am in my study at home. And I just want to, I sort of had a list of companies and I rang them up and had coffees with them. And before too long, you know, within a month, I was busy with work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, it was one of these coffee meetings in Subiaco. I saw Evan at a nearby table. Hi, Evan. And he goes, oh, we should catch up, you know, like you do.
Yep. Yep.
And we did actually catch up. And it was at this catch up about a year ago. He pitched the idea to me of Property Tribune and said, look, I run a digital marketing agency. Very successful. You know, it's grown from 11 staff to 25 during COVID, because probably a lot of businesses woke up and went, oh, we need digital.
Yeah, absolutely.
We can't meet. You know, so he was already a very successful business and been doing it 10 years, and COVID only just accelerated things for companies like that. And he said, you know, I run a very successful agency, consulting agency, but I want to build an asset, a property news site. And I've got the name in my head. I've got how to do it, but I haven't got time to do it. But I've got the funds to do it. And if you're available, I'd love you to come and do it with me. So he pitched to me and said, you know, I'm probably sitting across from the room from the one person in Perth who can do this. You've got media experience, business news, you've got property experience, tech experience, startup experience. I've got a few ideas. I'll send them to you. A few ideas. So he sends me a series of emails. When I cut and paste them into a Word document, 17 pages.
Wow.
All beautifully laid out in chapters. Typical Evan. Really well thought through.
Yeah.
I said, okay, this is not just an idea he's pulled out of thin air. He's been thinking about this. Yeah. And the more I thought about it, the more I wanted to do it. So I said, yeah, I'm in. And it was in November last year, so almost a year ago, that I went into his office in Subiaco and started planning for the launch of the Property Tribune. Now, I thought I will start in WA and then we'll get it going and then we'll grow to the other states. He went, no, day one, February the 1st, we're going to be national. I went, what? Yeah, I want 100 stories on the site before we launch. And then when we launch, I want 20 stories a day. I went, how much? When I want 20 stories a day, because only if we create that sort of content are going to make an impact. And then, of course, one thing I knew about living online and Evan, I knew that it would be built well, and I knew that he'd get traffic to it. So my job was to get the content on the 20 stories a day and then commercialize it. Yep. And those are the bits I could do. Yep. I couldn't build a site and I couldn't get the traffic, but that was taken care of. Sure. In a way, this is like a dream startup. Yep. I'm being paid to go in, create a business from scratch. I don't have to build the thing. I don't have to worry about the traffic. How good's that? So I spent a few months thinking about, well, how am I going to get this 20 stories a day? And I've been running startup news, as you know, for a few years. I took that over after I left this news. So I already had some writers that were really good. So I picked my best, most reliable and productive writers out of startup news. I said, do you want to work with me on this Property Tribune thing? And for them, it's fantastic. They're either Curtin Uni media journalism students or they're recent graduates. So perfect job for them. Like how many journalism jobs are there around? I mean, if anything, they've been cut. So that was, I knew that I could, with my internal team, we could bash out some stories. How are we going to get to 20 a day? So, okay, what would be really good if we could get some real estate agents around the country, because we're obviously based in WA. If we're going to measure around the country, we'll need real estate agents or people in the industry around the country who can write. Now you've got real estate agents. Imagine a Venn diagram. And then you've got people who can write. Sure. There's a little sliver of overlap. Yeah. Real estate agents who can write well and like to write. And with all seriousness, it's a difficult skill to write a good, punchy, concise, interesting 350 to 700 word piece.
Mm.
So I look for people who are already writing in the industry, and I contacted them and I said, would you like to be a contributor? I can't pay you anything, but you're going to get free exposure on a national website, which we're going to get behind. And before too long, I had 30 or 40 signed up. So if they publish, you know, one piece a week or one piece a month, plus my internal team, I know I can get the content on. So yes, off we went in February, in lockdown. Remember that first week in February?
Yeah. Yeah.
And by the second week, we were bashing out 20 stories a day.
Wow. That's amazing.
And I've actually just handed over the Property Tribune to my team. I got to the stage where by July, I'd gone down to half time. But ultimately, my objective was to make myself redundant, because if it relies on me, I haven't built anything.
Yes.
All I've done is got myself a job, built myself a job. And I don't want to build myself a job. I want to build a business, a system, a process that makes money and is an interesting service. And I can maybe keep a grandfatherly eye on it, but I don't need to be in there doing it every day. So at the end of September, I actually exited and handed over completely to my fantastic team and Evan. Job done. And the thing continues to grow.
Yeah.
You know? And in fact, that is of my most proudest moment. You know, what Business News has done after I've left, I am immensely proud. They're smashing it.
Absolutely.
And Property Tribune the same. And Rewe the same. I don't have to be there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe this is my lesson for other people is, you know, if you build something great, it shouldn't need you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You haven't built a business, you've built a practice, which you can then sell to another practice.
Yep.
But it's not a business if it relies on you.
Yeah.
If you can sell it to another business or another business person, it doesn't rely on you. And that ultimately, I think, is what startups should try and think about. How can you build something that another business will want to take over? And then you can go off and do something else. Or maybe you can go back and help and recycle your skills and capital into other startups.
Yeah.
Which is what I've tried to be doing the last 10 years since I exited to Rewe.
Yeah, so that makes sense to me, the idea of building a business and the systems and processes to run the business. And, you know, it's almost like a McDonald's. They work out really good ways to make burgers, and anyone can do it. Once they have their system in place, anyone can do it. So I sort of get that. The part that I struggle with, and a lot of clients and people that I talk to struggle with, is organically growing someone in your own business to replace yourself from the inside out, and having the ability to trust them to do a good job to the standard that you've been doing it, and then to let go as they take more and more responsibility. Do you have any tips around how to do that well?
Yeah. So I did that with you know, guy, I won't name him, but he knows who he is, and the ladies also at the team. In September, I knew who was going to take over from me and run it, and I knew he could do a great job. And I'd sort of been coaching him to do so. And so when we made the decision in September, he has taken over brilliantly, and he's been in contact with me irregularly. Every now and again, I popped in and say hi. He doesn't need me there, you know. And what was also good, we in September, we appointed 2 new lady journalists straight out of Curtin Media School. And one thing Evan's really good at is systems and processes. I've never seen a guy so on top of systems and process. They use Confluence. So it's like an internal Wikipedia. Everything in Living Online and in the Property Tribune has a Confluence guide. Everything. I mean, right down to how you change the toilet paper, how you clean the coffee machine. I mean, everything. But how brilliant it is, because so I haven't seen companies do this sort of documentation. And because it's not printed and forgotten in a file, it's a living, breathing, you know, you've got a link on your desktop, you can open up a Confluence guide, and if you change something, just update it, do a screenshot, do a little guide, publish, done. Right? And we plugged in 2 new reporters in September. And on the day they started, I said, well, here's the Confluence guides. It's got some videos and blah, blah, blah. within an hour or two, they were already writing stories.
Yeah.
And they published 3 stories each on their first day.
Yeah.
And I hardly had to do anything. I thought, I'm not needed. This system now has and that's good.
Yeah, totally.
My ultimate job is to make myself redundant.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
That is the system itself and process being understandable and efficient, so that you can plug people in and they're immediately productive on day one.
Yeah. Brilliant. Yeah, fantastic. So I want to change tack a little bit and ask you about your typical work week. So what's your normal work week like these days?
There is no typical
Yeah.
work week. Today I'm recording 3 podcasts. That's
wow.
And I did one yesterday. So I'm a guest with you now. I have a podcast called Startup West, where I interview startup founders.
Which is a great podcast. I'm a big fan of that one. Yeah.
Plug for Startup West. Wherever you get your podcast, search for Startup West. So we interview startup founders of all different shapes and sizes. And one thing I'm very proud about that one is 50% of our founders are female. I think it's very important not to have a series of men. I think if you're having a panel or an event, if it's just men, that to me isn't an anathema. No. I love Whitwer, what they do. Women in Technology WA. They have this saying: "If you can see her, you can be her." It's very important that we see different types of startup founders that inspire others. And I'm also on Trent Fleskin's Perth Property podcast today as a guest. And yesterday, I'm a co-host of the Perth PropTech radio show with the amazing Callum Ashton. Ash, as he's known, who set up the PropTech Hub. So yeah, I'm doing lots of as it happens, a lot of podcasts this week. Yeah. But typically, I'd be meeting a startup in a coffee shop or working with a tech company or maybe doing an event. I sit on a few boards, so preparing board papers, reading board papers or committees. So it's a nice mixture. I suppose you call it a portfolio of career, having a variety of different clients that I do paid work for, sit on boards, do events. Of course, we've got West Tech Fest coming up, and I run one of those events called Frio Startup Fest, which I think is sold out already.
Yes.
That's great fun. That's coming up in a couple of weeks. That whole week will just be West Tech Fest. 13 events in 5 days, and I can't go to 13 events sometimes, but it's the best week of the year. Yeah. So yeah, a real eclectic mixture of, as I suppose I'm a single employee consultant business, although I call myself advisor because it sounds more grown up than consultant. I'm working with a variety of tech companies.
Very cool. No, I love that. I mean, the idea of a portfolio career appeals to me because you never really get bored in that way. You're always doing something new, meeting new people and broadening your horizons of skills.
Now, that's not to say, because I'm not over the hill quite yet, that if an exec role comes up, I wouldn't grab it. If it really appeals to me, if I think can add value and it's something that is in my lane, startups, technology, innovation, where I can make a big difference.
Yes.
That's not to say that I wouldn't, but I can do that because I could, close my other work off and then go and do that.
Sure. Yeah.
And if it doesn't work out, I can go back and do, so yeah.
Yeah, you've got flexibility. It's a nice position to be in, to be able to pick and choose what you want to be involved in and what speaks to you. So what I'm interested then is what drives you? What do you care about deeply?
Well, obviously, apart from my family and my wife and my friends and stuff, and taking time out, which is very important, and keeping yourself healthy and fit and eating well and all that, because work is just work. It's not the most important thing. It isn't. Shouldn't be. People say, "Oh, it's difficult to have work-life balance." No, it isn't. That's a choice you make. Yeah, you make choices in life, and no one's telling you have to answer that email at 8:37 on the couch. Put the friggin' phone away. Talk to your partner. Go out for a meal. Go out for a walk. Walk the dog. Whatever it is. Go and play squash. Whatever it is. You've got, your life is like a 3-legged stool, right? You've got to have time for your family and your partner. yes, there's time for work and there's time for you.
Mm.
And you've got to, equal that three-legged stool.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't, it falls over.
Mm-hmm.
So, don't know if that answered your question, but if your question was more about work, what motivates me in work,
yes,
then what motivates me in work is helping the startup tech scene, help develop more great tech companies in Western Australia, because we are being invaded, and we have been now over the last 10 or 15, 20 years, by very well-backed digital Vikings.
Mm.
And I use them all. I'm a sucker for them all, right? I'm an absolute sucker for them all. So, I've got my iPhone, I've got my Facebook, and I've got my Google, and I've got my Spotify, and I've got my Netflix, and I don't drive a Tesla, but, pretty much all of those well-backed, overseas-owned, scalable tech companies. I'm sad to say I love them all, I use them all, but the problem is they are white-anting all these industries, almost, again, invisibly, because great things happen slowly. They have slowly been taken over. Facebook and Google now account for about 90% of digital marketing in Australia. Billions and billions of dollars. They don't pay much tax, and they don't employ many people. And as we've seen this year with Google and News, they wield a lot of political power, such that they could, on one day, I remember we were only a few weeks old, the Property Tribune, they could wipe our Facebook page. Facebook could wipe our page of all our news like that.
Yep. And
then could be on a phone call to the Prime Minister and the Treasurer negotiating terms. So I asked the question, where are the West Australian and where are the Australian tech companies? Because they're out there, they just need more support and help. But we're actually quite good at it. But whenever I ask, I'm doing a keynote speech or whatever, and I ask the audience, right, name me an Australian tech company. They can go, Canva. Then they go, Atlassian. I go, okay, third one, anyone? And it's like crickets.
Do we get to claim zero, or are they New Zealand founded?
I mean, but name me a mining company, name me a property company.
Sure.
So nothing wrong with property companies, mining companies. But, we've got to be more than one trick pony. And I'm an old economics teacher. And if you look at the economy of WA, it's broadly $250 billion, right? 72 billion is mining. 30 billion is government. We like government. 25 billion is property, 20 billion is construction. So if you add though property, government, and mining, it's about 2/3 of the economy. So everything else, medical, education, tourism, technology, everything else, financial, is in that little third. And we're relying too much on too little. And mining goes in a boom and we're all off to the races and we go, hey, iron ore price, 200, yay. And then we're off to the races again and we forget about the rest of the economy. We really should diversify. And then we go in a long, because mining, it's good for a while and then it's quite bad for a long time. Yes. And then it's good for a while and it's bad for a long time. And in the bad for a long time, people go, why did we diversify the economy? And then mining takes off again and we forget it. And we're off to the races again. It's like, come on, let's see what we're doing long term.
Yeah.
So I like the fact that, there's more talk now about diversification of the economy, seeing more action. So in a long-winded answer to your question, that's what motivates me. Getting more scalable WA tech companies up and running that create, great jobs. AgWorld sold for $100 million out of West Leederville. I interviewed him on the podcast just last week on Solid West, Doug Fitch. Great story. Health Engine about to go to an IPO worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Sector sold for, tens of, if not more than 50 million, dollars. Educational technology, all Perth. But Canva was originally from Perth, and then skipped over to Sydney and and off they went, and now worth 55 billion. I mean, what amazing wealth creation in just sort of 8 or 9 years. It's sort of, that's why I like scalable tech companies. You know, you're not going to hit a camera every time, but if you do, wow, or anything approaching it, like a health engine or an ag world or a sector, then you're going to create a tremendous amount of income and wealth. And it's Australian jobs, Australian income, Australian tax being paid, right? This is all good for the community. And these are good, well-paid, decent, clean jobs of the future.
Yeah.
And that's what we should be trying to generate.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, brilliant. I absolutely agree with you in terms of WA creating its own successful tech sector. And I've been involved in innovation in WA for about 11 years now. And it's always the same story. You know, we need more angel funds. We need more success stories of Western Australian tech companies being successful. We need more this, we need more that. And it seems to me like we kind of have, you know, to a large degree, a lot of the resources in place now. It's just a matter of the growth over time, as you say. Like, great changes happen slowly, so it's not like we're going to all of a sudden, you know, turn out next year to be generating 100 billion in our economy through the tech sector, but hopefully in 10 years we can aim at that, you know, or 20 years. So it happens slowly, but I agree with you wholeheartedly on that front.
And not every startup should be funded, as I said earlier, and not every startup should even be looking for funding. I'd say, look, forget about your funding, get your first customer on board, work out what problem you're solving for them, get them paying you something, and try and repeat that. Then if you need funding, it's going to be easier to get funding, because investors can say, oh, they've got a good product, customers using it, testimonials, good, I can see the invoices, it's scaling. They need a little bit of help now, a little bit of rocket fuel to go whoosh, but that's what you need to do. Absolutely.
Totally.
But when you look at, I'm afraid in WA, this is what we need to change. Only 0.4% of capital that went to WA companies last year went to early stage tech. 0.4%.
Right.
I looked on Business News and I got them to add up for me all the capital raisings last financial year. It was $11.3 billion, right? But only 0.4% of that went to early stage tech. It's not good enough. 0.4% ain't good enough. That's just not enough support, right? So in a way, we need to educate the investors how to invest in early stage tech. The more I speak to investors, they'd like to be able to do so. They just don't know quite how.
Sure.
And there isn't much venture capital to speak of in WA. There's some angels doing great stuff, but most of them have already invested. They haven't got much more money to invest. They need more angels to join Perth Angels and Southwest Angels and all that to be able to do more deals. They need to get in more angels. And I celebrate what they're doing and I hope more people get behind them. And I know that Carbon Group are great supporters of Perth Angels. Fantastic. Jamie and Nathan are great supporters. But we also need venture to do the sort of follow-on funds. And really only have one venture fund at the moment. That's Better Labs, $23 million fund, seeded by RAC, which is fantastic. You know, but we need 2 or 3 others of similar size so they can collaborate on deals, do, you know, big follow-on Series A type rounds of several million type things. That's what we need. And maybe a little bit of competitive tension where they're competing with each other because they want to invest in the next best thing. Instead of there being one.
Sure.
Venture.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or worse, we lose them and they go over east.
Well, that's a common
story overseas, too. Or they give up.
Yes.
Because of lack of support.
Yeah, there's been quite a few Perth startups head over to Silicon Valley recently and start making their mark on the world over there.
And good on them. You know, so totally. Olivia from Canopy with a K, I remember meeting her before she went to Silicon Valley, and she didn't go there for funding. She went there because in the States there's 4,500 universities and her customers are universities. And there's only 39 universities in Australia. So she had to go to the States. And her husband looked at each other and we just said, we don't want to have any regrets here that we didn't go.
Yeah.
let's go. And they went with like a new baby and everything.
Yeah.
And they went over there, and an amazing success story. She became like the Netflix for universities. She became the #1 streaming video for universities and then libraries. And what's great about Olivia is just before COVID, very well timed, she exited out of Canopy and came back to Perth. So we have someone like that who's been there and done it and then come back. So I don't mind if they go offshore or go elsewhere. It'd be great then when they're successful to come back. They bring their capital, their experience and their know-how, and they recycle that back into our community.
100%. So last question, or last series of questions,
Sure.
put it that way. What's your experience been with the R&D tax incentive over the years?
Big fan. And this was, I mean, I remember when the R&D tax incentive came in. I know it sort of has its germination in the 80s, but I think it was John Howard who really changed the game in the early 2000s, and it became this big sort of, was it 125% offset thing or 150% offset or something?
And refundable,
right? I mean, you got tax back from you got cash back from the ATO if you were making losses.
Yes.
Now, as an early stage startup making losses, we couldn't believe it. And I was told by 2 accountants that I wasn't eligible for it. And I was at a
was that with Aussie Home that you were told you were ineligible?
early days, early 2000s when we first came in.
Told that.
Yeah, I was told by 2 accountants. My existing one, who obviously I didn't use after that, and another one. And then the third, I thought, oh well, it's not for us. It's not for us. I happened to be at a sundowner, and I bumped into a former MBA, a colleague, and he said to me, "No, you I'm pretty sure you'd be right for this. And moreover, this is year 2. I should be able to get you the refund for last year because you didn't apply for last year. And last year it came in. So I should be able to get you 2 years worth." And I said, "Really? What's the catch?" I said, "No catch. I'll just take a percentage of what you get." So this is like, I went, "Okay, let's do it then." And we ended up getting, I was like teary eyes at the time. It was just like, this has made a big, we got like $110,000 cash. We got 2 lots of 55,000.
And so what was your
game-changing?
What was your total expenses for the year, just for some context in that?
So you get about 40, I mean, back then 45% of your eligible R&D tax spending back. So our spending must have been around about 100,000
on R&D specifically.
Just over actually,
On R&D, what was your total company spend?
Oh, I see.
Just R&D.
I think our turnover was around about $500,000 then.
Okay.
Yeah, most of it, and
so maybe a fifth of your budget was spent on R&D.
Probably, yeah.
And
we, because we were developing this mapping technology. Remember, it was before Google Maps. We had three or four different mapping providers before Google came along in 2005 and pretty much gave maps away for free. We must have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on mapping and other things we were developing. So that was amazing. And of course, that was good because what it's doing is it's encouraging people doing R&D to keep doing it. But that to us was the difference between life and death. I mean, that allowed us to keep going. That was another salary paid for. Right? And I remember getting that check for 110,000. It was on Melbourne Cup Day, which is always very quiet because everyone's off getting drunk, various long lunches. We never did that. I'm not really into horse racing. Sorry, I'm not into it. I don't like the fact they shoot horses because they fall over. I've never been into it, right? So we never had a Melbourne Cup lunch or anything. Never went to one. So I remember going down to the bank with a check. It was a very hot day and it was Melbourne Cup Day, so it was deserted. And we wanted to put this check in the bank. Get it in there. Couldn't believe it. So R&D tax. I mean, I was amazed the number of people I met over the last 20 years who still don't know it exists. It's got very bad public relations. It does. Nobody knows about it, and it's amazing that it's so helpful, so fundamentally to so many early stage businesses, and yet still
you talk to a lot of even tax agents and accountants today, they don't know what it is. Or if they do know what it is, they don't want to touch it because it's like this risky thing and it's not really something that I want to be involved in. So the easiest thing to do is to give you the advice that you got from two accountants, which is, no, you're not eligible, you know.
And when I went to Business News, they weren't using it and we used it.
Yep.
And we got quite a bit of money back. So we're doing a lot of development there.
Yep.
Obviously not at Rewa. In the startups I've been in since, we've used it.
Yep.
But I'll tell you another thing that people don't know about, that went in even less known than R&D, in 2016 when ESIC rules came in.
Yes, absolutely.
Probably the best thing Malcolm Turnbull did, right?
Totally.
ESIC, early stage investor company or innovation company.
Innovation company, yes.
Where you can get 20% back of your investment into a startup.
And capital gains free for 10 years.
And then 10 years capital gains exemption. With no upside, with no ceiling.
Imagine if you had invested 100 million into Canva early days and then got all that.
50 grand into Canva. It's worth hundreds of millions now. That's free.
Yeah.
And again, financial advisors don't know about it. Accountants don't know about it. High net worths don't know about it. I can tell you who does know about it. All the Perth Angels know about it.
Yeah, of course.
The two startups that I've invested in the last year or so, I have claimed ESIC successfully on both.
Yeah.
My accountant knows about it. Like
the thing with that one is
know more about it.
Yeah, the thing with that one is it's even more difficult because it doesn't directly help the companies themselves. So it may be worth mentioning in a pitch deck to just put a tagline like, we are ESIC eligible, so invest in us because you're going to get a tax break.
Yes.
Other than that, the companies don't have a lot of incentive to get the word out. So it has to come from the angel.
Well, they do, because it'll help them get investment, which is the whole point.
If they're raising, but
they're
not necessarily all raising.
Oh, they're not always, yes, correct.
Yeah.
Normally people they're pitching for money, but yes. And it was from a very successful system that came in the UK. Now in the UK, pretty much only people invest in the equivalent early stage investor scheme over there. It hasn't really made an impact. Sadly, people don't know about it. You know, again, you think the R&D tax is badly promoted. ESIC is neither. Yeah,
agreed. And, you know, it's difficult to know what to do about it other than to just tell every man and his dog that'll listen. That's what I do. But, you know, it's a small splash in a...
So there are things there. I just think a lot of the bits are in place. It just needs to be coordinated. Maybe that's a role for government or someone to just keep this, you know, I'll keep banging on about it, but I'm just a lone voice in the wilderness on the top of my hill, barking to the moon. But more people need to know about it. And to back, hey, look, I think I meet a lot of high net worths and corporates, and I go, have some fun. Help some startups. You know, worst case, it's something to talk about over the summer barbecue with mates and show off about at dinner parties in the chattering classes of the Western suburbs. Worst case, it gives you a topic of conversation. And they don't need a lot of money. 10 grand, 20 grand, 50 grand goes a long way. And you can help an early stage entrepreneur get up on their feet and get going and maybe get to customer. Because MVP these days, minimum viable product, might only cost 10 or 20 grand, and you can get customers and see if they'll pay.
Totally.
My last two investments were both like that. They were 15, 20 grand, enough to build them a product, get to customer. And I said, guys, we're worth nothing until customers are paying us money. If customers are paying us money, maybe we've got something. And when we get there, then we'll go and raise some serious money.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant.
And in the meantime, I'll claim my ESIC. Thank you very much.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly. Why wouldn't you? All right, Charlie. Well, thank you so much for joining me on episode 1, and hopefully there will be an episode 2.
Hey!
But that remains to be seen. I appreciate your time and your wisdom and the experience you've had in WA and in the innovation scene. And I wish you, more power to you and everything you're involved in, because I think the more people doing it, the better. So, yeah.
Thanks for having me. And what's the name of the podcast? How do we find it?
Yeah, so the podcast will be The Growth Trajectory, and it will be on just YouTube initially, but we'll see how we go. If we get a bit of traction, we might, move over to Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all the rest of it. But just YouTube to start with, and start small. I might get my first customer first before I invest further in it. You know what I mean?
Someone's been listening to some good advice.
Yes, exactly.
I'll give you a shout out at the next Startup West recording. Go look for the growth trajectory.
Brilliant.
On YouTube. All right. Thanks, Maitreya.
Thanks so much, Charlie. Take care, my friend.